Hi, everyone. I'm Dontae Mears. I'm the global head of influencer marketing at Depop. I'm so excited to be here because I think we have some great panelists to really kind of discuss all of the different, avenues and directions that you can take in your marketing career. I know I've been working in marketing for the past decade, and I've had a variety of different types of roles in a bunch of different functions, anywhere from influencer marketing to paid media and performance, affiliate, content production. So there's so many different ways that you can utilize your strengths in marketing, and I'm really excited to hear everyone's journey today and answer some great questions. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to today's panelists, and then we'll dive into the discussion. So first up, we have Zaria Parvez. Zaria is the global social media manager at Duolingo, where she grew the famous TikTok from 50,000 followers in 2021 to just under 5 million followers today. And also Zaria was named on the 2024 30 Under 30 list for social media this week. So very big congratulations there. We also have Kendra Burnett, a senior product marketing manager at Handshake, and made a career pivot from client services into marketing, and has worked at multiple early to mid-stage startups in both B2B and B2C spaces. So really great context for us to have there. And then we have Ziad Ahmed, is the founder and CEO of Jude Consulting, a Gen Z company that works with clients, including 30 of the Fortune 500, to connect them with young people. So let's just go ahead and start off with some quick intros about everyone's roles and what they're up to today. So in maybe about a minute or so, I'd love if you could explain your job like you would explain it to your parents. I know I've had it's taken me many years to kind of get to that point of my parents understanding what I do. So I'd love to hear your pitch, assuming your parents don't work in the world of marketing. So Zaria, let's go ahead and kick it off to you. What does the owl of Duolingo do?
Yeah, so I am our global social media manager. So that mainly means I'm in charge of all the content that goes out there. So I'm usually the person that's hitting post. A lot of it is like creative concept making. So video recording, photo, meme making. And now recently I've kind of transitioned more into a global job where we're actually trying to expand our TikTok into different countries. So doing a lot of consulting with our other global teams as well.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Ziad, what does being a CEO of a marketing agency involve?
Wait, can you repeat that?
Yeah, what does being a CEO at a marketing agency involve?
So, every day is a new challenge, and I learn a lot more than I could have ever bargained for. And I'm definitely not in the career path that I necessarily ever expected when I was younger. A lot of my job is just being on calls and talking to people. And a fair bit of my job, which I enjoy the most, is like coming up with a big idea that maybe pushes the client to do the better, right, more exciting, bolder thing. But a lot of it is people management and crisis management and business development, right? And a lot of parts of the job that I'm not necessarily as excited about, but I get really excited about the parts of my job that are community oriented, that are people oriented, right? Where we get to hopefully lean into doing business a little bit differently, right? And Zaria knows a few folks on our team. I'd like to think we have a pretty special sauce at Jude Consulting. If nothing else, we like to say that we hire for broken minds. And so a lot of my job is playing with the puzzle that is our broken minds at Jude Consulting, and trying to see what purpose we can make from that, both for ourselves and for our clients. But it's 1,000,001 different things, and that's partly what I like about it, is that it is 1,000,001 different things. That's partly what I hate about it. So yeah, that's like my short 1-minute synopsis, I guess, but I could obviously talk about it forever.
Well, we'll definitely dive in a bit more. I'd love to unpack a bit of that. And Kendra, could you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day in product marketing?
Sure. So similarly, each day can be a little bit different. Product marketing, as I like to think about it, if I were explaining it to my parents, is almost like you are the connecting pieces within a spider web, but the spider web is an organization. And so you're communicating with the marketing team. You're also working with the product team, as is obvious within the name, but it means so much more than that. You're talking with folks in sales. You're talking to leadership about strategy, and you're trying to connect all of the different pieces together and say, okay, how can we bring all of these things together, connect them into one holistic message, and then bring that out so that we're singing from the same song sheet every day. There's also a lot of different things. Similarly, crisis comms can come up. You're going to jump over from one project to another to make sure that you're focusing on the things that matter most at that time, as well as thinking about the long-term strategy of the organization. But it's funny, Ziad, it's very similar, I think, from your position of you're in a lot of meetings, you're talking to a lot of people day in and day out, and then you have some downtime where you're able to focus on actually creating and writing of what you want to make, and then bringing those different themes, messages, positioning to the team, and then hopefully to the market as a whole.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think that there's, being in an organization and working in marketing, there's so much importance on really being able to work with a lot of different stakeholders and being able to bring those ideas to life and be able to impart your vision and your perspective, but also really make sure that you're delivering for the consumer. I know prior to, working at Depop, I didn't know much about like kind of the product marketing space. So Kendra, I'm very excited to continue to learn more. I know it's super critical on how we actually explain our features to our consumers. I'm not quite sure if my parents fully understand the influencer marketing aspect of it, but hopefully, with a couple more years, we can get them up to speed. But there are so many students that we have on the line today that are trying to figure out exactly what they want to do after graduation, and as we've mentioned, there's so many different avenues. Or we even have some recent grads that might want to make a career pivot. I'd love to, kind of understand, from your perspective, what helped you realize that marketing was the right path for you? And are you feeling that you're on that right path now, or are there still adjustments that you're making along the way? So yeah, Zaria, why don't we go ahead and kick it off with you? Duolingo was your first job out of college. Did you always know that you wanted to work in social? Did you have any internships, or how did you go about landing that role at Duolingo?
Yeah. So as I say, like most brown kids, I thought I was going to be a doctor. So I was in pre-med for I started off as pre-med. And I always tell the story. So I was like in chemistry and I was awful at it. The one thing I was good at was like the chem labs, and like all the write-ups and all that stuff. I really enjoyed writing. And my favorite part was also like, why is this relevant to like the rest of the world, like the findings and all that stuff. And I was so bad at chemistry that I remember my TA being like, just choose any other career. They're like, this just isn't it. And I mean, I appreciate the honesty, honestly. And from there, I just kind of was exploring in college and I just ran into marketing. It was like a cool major to have on campus. And the professors were cool. So I just started taking classes and I really enjoyed it. And I focused in media planning and brand strategy. So I had some internships throughout my time in college at different places. So I was at Havas in New York, which is this really cool advertising agency. I did some smaller agencies out in Portland, where I'm from. And honestly, I cared more about the company. So I really cared about Duolingo and the mission and what it was, more so than the role it had. And I was like, I'll do whatever role it is and I can just learn it. And I think that is what kind of paved the way. And even now I'm still learning what I love and what I hate. I don't know if I'm going to be in social forever. Maybe I will. But it's all an experiment in my head. Everything is me testing and learning at every moment in my life, I guess, thus far.
I love that, applying, some of those principles to your own life. That's really interesting. And always love the fearless feedback from, the chem teacher.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And Kendra, you didn't, kind of start out in marketing, but, more in the client services side. So how did you go about, making that pivot into marketing and, what was kind of the impetus there? And are there, any skills that you brought from that client services world into your, current work?
Yeah. So interestingly, I too was pre-med in college and thought that I wanted to be a psychiatrist. And so I was a psych major, super gung-ho about that. And then similarly, it wasn't inorganic, but organic chemistry kicked my butt and told me, this is not the path for you. And I accepted that and it was okay. So after college, I was actually pretty lost. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. That had been what I envisioned my entire life up until that point. And so I just started trying new things. I wanted to move to the Bay Area. And so I made it a mission to apply to any role I could. With a psych background, I was able to, land a sales job in a B2C market. Really thrived in that for a little bit, but wanted to do some more storytelling and really get into the meat of why people care, what what is this thing that you care about, and how can I help you see that it will be beneficial to you overall? Because so much of marketing is really just active listening. And that's what I took away from both my psych background, from sales, from working as a customer success manager, is really just actively listening to what your customers or the market is saying and trying to highlight how you can solve their pain. At the end of the day, I think so many people think of marketing as like, oh, you're always selling. And really you're just listening and you're trying to help someone. And you do that through words at a larger scale. And really that's what led me to it. Is I love listening to people and I love trying to help people. And so I think active listening is probably the biggest skill set that I've taken throughout my entire career. And then being able to translate that is really where the product marketing and marketing love has come in.
That's awesome, and really critical to do that listening work. I think, so much of the work that we do is driven by consumer insights or being able to, talk one-to-one or in panels. And so it's really great to have that feedback loop. Now, kind of just to continue with you, Kendra, for a little bit, do you have any advice for, students that might be with us today that are thinking about making this switch? Like, how did you, what was that process like for you, when you were, thinking about moving into this new role?
Yeah. Candidly, I fell into it a little bit. So just rolling back, the way that I actually found out about product marketing is I was working as a customer success manager, and I had a colleague that joined as a product marketer. I developed a relationship with her. I really love getting to know my colleagues and just understanding their perspective and what they do. And so the thing that led me to understanding what it was is just looking within myself of really understanding, well, within my day-to-day job, what do I really love? And what are the things that maybe I don't love as much, but I'm good at? And then trying to continuously follow the path of what do I love doing? And are there different careers that use those skill sets? And so for me, it was a lot of just asking questions and trying to understand what exists in the world. And that has always been through just talking to colleagues or talking to friends and really understanding, what do you do day to day? What is like your everyday life? And, tell me the truth about it. What do you like? What do you hate about it? And can I see myself in those paths? And the way that I was able to make that transition was candidly just being relentlessly a relentless advocate for myself, maybe to the pain of some of my managers. But from day one, even at Handshake, I've always made it known I love products and I love being part of teams that I can help build, and I want to tell a story. And maybe I don't do that every single day in my position right now as a CSM, but I want to grow the team that I'm on. I want to help it as much as possible. And I see the way that I can do that is being the product advocate for this team. And so I think it just comes down to advocating for the things that you love, being really transparent with your manager, and still being cognizant of the fact that if you're not in the marketing position right now, but you want to get there, do your job to the absolute best of your ability, and then see and ask if there are opportunities to try new projects along the way. And yes, it does mean that you're putting in a ton of work, maybe some extra hours there, but it's all for the benefit of getting you to the career path that you want to. And that's been my experience with it, is just constantly asking, how can I help this team? And what ways can we kind of bridge those two teams together? Because there is always a way, no matter what team you're on, to try and understand another part of the business and then try and create some sort of pathway or at least project to work together.
That's a really great, kind of perspective there. I think, I spend so much time, as a leader in my organization focusing on, the development of my, my team and how they want to continue to grow their skill sets and their, career. And I think one of the, very critical things that you kind of mentioned is that, your career just doesn't happen to you. You really have to work at it, and you have to ask those questions. And I think, sometimes, those individuals on my teams that make the biggest kind of progression are the ones that are pushing me. So, even if you may have felt, a little like annoying at sometimes or probably, bothersome, I think that's exactly the mindset and place you need to be in. I know I really enjoy working with those employees that are pushing me to make sure that I'm also thinking about their development as often as possible. So yeah, thank you. And Ziad, you decided to go into kind of a new direction and really kind of go on your own, start your own agency. I'd love to, kind of understand how you decided to make that leap. Like, what kind of gave you that confidence to launch something?
Well, I guess it's worth noting that I had no idea I was starting an agency. And I'm still, I guess, contending with the reality that maybe perhaps I do now. I, have always been a kid who was loud, who was curious, and I think probably like many of the folks on the line today, like just loves content. And what I mean by that is, like, I think of my life as watching TV is like my static state, and everything else is a departure from that. Like, everything that I do is a break from watching TV. But I guess how I actually started like the business is I started a nonprofit, actually, or I guess it wasn't a nonprofit at the time, but it was like, it ended up becoming a nonprofit. I was a presumptuous, overzealous, young kid, and I wanted to change the world. I guess, I still hope maybe in some small way that I can, maybe, I don't know, but maybe more jaded now than I was. But at the time, started an entity called Redefy, where essentially we created resources to make communities and schools more inclusive and equitable. This idea that maybe perhaps through content, we can tell each other's stories and humanize our perception of the other, and maybe arrive at a little bit more of an inclusive and accepting society. As an American Muslim, as a person of color, as a political progressive, these issues mattered to me, my friends, the people I cared about. And I didn't see my schools, the areas around me, really, at least in my context, doing anything meaningful to tackle them. And so I got started, had no idea what the hell I was doing, and found myself in rooms that I didn't know existed, with industry leaders, with decision makers, with politicians when I was 15, 16 years old, and where I felt whatever the opposite of imposter syndrome was. That not how did I get here? I don't belong here, but no, like, so many more of us belong here, right? There needs to be so many more diverse young people in these spaces, in these rooms. They're talking about us, but not to us, and this isn't right. And they're getting it all wrong. And so my junior year of high school, I didn't know I was starting a marketing company. I was just like, there needs to be some way that these folks in charge can learn from the diverse young friends around me who are far smarter and cooler than I am, right? And it was from a pain point of being really pissed that I was in a lot of rooms and there were like people 6, 7, like 5, 4, 3, 2 decades my senior speaking for us. And I was like, that's not what I want to be happening. Didn't think I was necessarily starting a marketing company and or an agency, but it so happened that as I started, it was a lot of marketers that reached out. I think to the point that Kendra made, marketing is a lot of listening, right? And to your point, Dontae, a lot of consumer insights, a lot of really understanding who you're trying to reach, who you're trying to serve, who you're trying to talk to. And so we've sort of become a marketing agency, I suppose, one that operates, I think, very differently than many, and one that I hope centers purpose and community far more than all, perhaps, but maybe not all, but definitely the vast majority, I hope, I think. But I don't know that it was a decisive choice for me. I also didn't think I started as a junior in high school. I never thought I'd be doing this full time, let alone have full-time employees with children at 23 and find myself in a Welsh castle right now in the middle of nowhere. I never thought any of this was possible. I was certainly very privileged and lucky, but I did not know any of this existed, was possible, was a career path. It was certainly not taught to me as a career path that was viable. But I'm here, and I'm learning, and I'm loving it some days, and that's my truth.
I love that. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about, kind of what the day-to-day looks like. And I don't know if the day-to-day looks like, Wales for you all the time, but, I'd love to understand.
No, certainly not. Certainly not.
Well, yeah, just kind of in general, maybe, Kendra, we'll start with you. Like, what does that day-to-day look like? Are you working on multiple projects at once, balancing multiple kind of work streams, or is there often times where you're, focusing on one particular, type of campaign or product launch? So yeah, if you could describe a typical day or how it kind of goes for you, I'd love to, hear that.
Yeah, I think realistically, it might actually be helpful to describe a typical week. And the reason I say that is in product marketing in particular, it is usually you're looking at timelines on a little bit of a longer runway, right? You're working with multiple different departments. So for me personally, I'll even give you, this past week, I was working on multiple pitch decks, which is, when we are actually showcasing a product, how are we explaining it? How are we explaining the value? And how is really the sales team and most of the externally facing teams demonstrating that and articulating it out to the market. So that's one project I was working on with this week, was more of the latter stage design element of it. At the same time, I'm also working on the messaging and positioning framework of a separate product line. And so you're constantly working on multiple projects at once. So project management is an absolute must in this role, because you're working on pitch decks, you're working on frameworks, you may be working on a longer term campaign where you are focused on a theme rather than a specific product. And you're trying to figure out with your cross-functional partners, okay, I know the products that are coming out in the next 2 months, let's say. Our overall theme is X. How do I slot in product A, B, and C into this larger set theme? And if I'm not able to, why am I not able to? And that's feedback I need to then take to the product team and make sure that we're all in alignment around what we're trying to bring to the market from a messaging perspective, from a product perspective. So multiple projects during the week. And what that turns into is probably like 2 or 3 hours during the day where I have really good heads down focus time for writing. Maybe 3 to 4 hours of meetings with different cross-functional stakeholders, and then some other downtime to review things like product requirement documents or briefs on what the overall strategy is. And then obviously I want to take some time for lunch and, make sure I'm taking care of myself as well. So I like to break those up during the day. But that would be kind of a typical week, depending on where we are in the seasonality of our business. I might be focused a little bit more on strategizing for the next cycle. So at Handshake, we have 2 really strong user times of year for recruiting. It's pretty cyclical. And so right now we're starting to prepare more for spring recruiting, our webinar series, our overall campaign strategies, and make sure that all of the products that we are launching have a go-to-market plan in place so that we can enable our internal teams and notify the market about the value that those new products are going to bring to them and how they make their lives easier.
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. And I know like the period of the time is super critical the time of the year is super critical on how you're actually going to bring something to market. And I know it's Q4 right now. It's definitely a crazy time for marketers, and whether you're planning for the holidays or ramping up for the next year. Zaria, I would love to understand a little bit more about kind of what your day-to-day looks like right now. What are you focused on? Is that, Q4 crunch kind of hitting you right now? Or are you planning some really fun things for the next year?
Yeah, so I think I really try to dictate my time into like personal and professional growth. And I think the cool part about being at Duolingo, for example, it's like a very small company. I mean, it's growing, but it's like there's a lot of creative freedom in what you want to do and where you want to go and how they can support you get there. So I really wanted to do more stuff with creators. Like that was like a big thing that I thought we didn't hit yet, and something fun that we could just learn. So recently, this was Q3, but we did like a creator day where we just invited like all these awesome creators to Duolingo and just gave them a really fun time and an experience, and then just created content. And like our whole brief was like, give us the ideas that other brands rejected and tell us what you need to make them happen. And it was really fun and people loved it. And it was just like an exciting time and energy. So I get to work with really awesome influencers and meet them. And then we get to do really fun, cool activities like we did custom perfume making and all these things just to get people hype about Duolingo creators. And then I also do a lot of campaign work. So April Fools is like a big moment for us. So we just got briefed on what we want to do for April Fools this year. So we're working on that. And I think the coolest part of the job personally that I like didn't realize when I was in college is like, you really dictate where you want to go with it. So like I've been able to travel to really cool places and go on sets and see like how things are made or how we can make like a TV spot and how that happens. And I think sometimes when you're in college, you don't realize like, oh, wow, like the world is really your oyster. Like you can go really anywhere with it. So yeah, that's been super fun for me. And then of course, filming content is always great. It's always nice to take a step away from my desk and just get the guy in the duo suit and then just go and create some content together and see what we can make. So yeah, my day is very scattered and kind of where I want it to go, which is an awesome place to be.
That's awesome. Like, you know, in your day to day, I just kind of continue this next question with you. Are there any, you know, kind of skills that you use every day, whether it's more, you know, analytics, it is, you know, content creation, is it Photoshop, Canva? Like, what are those things that you think are kind of essential to being a successful marketer?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely basic skills like Photoshop and all that fun stuff. If you know how to make a meme, you're going to do great in social media. So definitely that basic stuff. Content creation, knowing how to use your way around a phone, around a camera is always awesome. But I think like the biggest skill set that really any social media person can bring, and like even when we're looking for on our interns, is a drive to create entertaining and good content and like your ideas. I think that matters more to us more than like if you're a marketing major or XYZ's on your portfolio, like we want to see the ideas you bring forward. So for me, like that was, I talk a lot about coming from an intersectional background. And like, because of that, I've experienced so many different things. And I feel like I can jump to so many different audiences and give ideas to these different audiences that'll resonate. So yeah, I think it's more about the mindset and the idea creating, which is like the biggest skill set you can have beyond anything.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy to have. And you know, kind of you know, continuing on that, like you know, Ziad, I would love to kind of kick it over to you and think a little bit about those skills. One of the things I think we all need to have as marketers is really being, you know, flexible and just, you know, adjusting to change. I think that's you know, an inherent skill that we bring to the table, you know, especially with all of the new platforms that are emerging, the trends that are always, you know, popping up. You know, Ziad, I would love to understand, like, how do you stay up to date? Like, how does your agency adapt to change, and especially as you help, you know, brands translate that into content? What do you do in your kind of, you know, your personal world that allows you to stay current with, you know, kind of what's important to your generation?
Well, I'm certainly, you know, I started when I was 16, so I don't know that I'm as on it in it as I used to be. But I certainly think it's a huge part of my job to be culturally literate, right? We exist as a company because we believe that the expert on any reality, is the person closest to that reality, right? And really where we've found strength and I see I've been reading some of the questions that have been coming in, right? And I think some of the questions like, how do you like earn that authority, right? And I'm still trying to, right? But I think by showcasing folks what they don't know, right? When you showcase people that you know something that they do not, that they need to, then you're now operating from a place of authority that allows for you to reorient the conversation. That's a huge part of our pitch, right? Is of course like entering with an energy and a confidence and a charisma and a community that hopefully is distinct and engaging and charismatic, I hope, but also they're really showing people that we know something that they do not, right? And so that means that I got to know things that they don't, right? And what that looks like for me is I watch a lot of TV. I scroll a lot on TikTok. I hang out a lot with my friends, right? And I talk to a lot of people from like so many different circles and worlds and places and disciplines. And like I say, like I hire for broken minds, and what I'm looking for is people who like rapturously consume the world around them and ask really hard questions about it. Like really for me, like marketing is equal parts like strategy and execution as it is anthropology. Like, I don't love partying. I love going to partying. I like going to parties because I love studying the fact that other people find them fun. Right? Like, it's fascinating to me to like observe other people in other situations to see like what is incentivizing people, like what is shaping culture, whom is shaping culture, like where is it going and where are we going? And I love my job because I think marketing gives us permission to talk about anything, to talk about everything, because everything is a story, right? And everything is an input in the choices that we're making day to day. And so like what I try to do is to like be closest to those things and to surround myself with people who are more close to them than I, so they can teach me. That looks like having directors of insights on my team who are still in high school, right? Who can teach me what it's like to be a high schooler right now, because I'm not as cool or young as I once was, right? And empowering younger leaders than me to be hopefully the me that I was and be better than I was. And so I don't know, it's a lot of content, it's a lot of conversations, and it's a lot of hiring people a lot smarter and cooler than I am.
I love that. Well, you'll definitely get an invite to my next party so that you can do some research.
I cannot wait.
Awesome. And so kind of continuing along that, Kendra, you've been, promoted to senior product marketing manager just a few months ago. Congrats. Really just 2 years after pivoting into marketing. And I think, what kind of skills helped you, make that transition and helped you grow into that role?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been kind of a wild ride, which is sometimes crazy to look back on. I had mentioned this before, but I think one of the biggest strengths has really, truly been like active listening. And I think what I've noticed is that there is a really big difference between hearing someone or listening to someone and actually hearing them, and being able to synthesize and relay that information back has been instrumental in everything that I do with product marketing. Candidly, I think the other skill set that is a little bit easier to develop, in my opinion, is project management and just ruthless prioritization. That has been key so that I can set up realistic timelines for people, give deliverables as needed. And it's a skill that's a little harder to create, but I think what really sets folks apart and allows you to excel in your career faster is the ability to be thoughtful and unafraid to give feedback and really upwardly manage leadership so that you can provide the perspective that you are the authority on because you're in the weeds of your work every single day. And I'm very fortunate because Handshake's leadership is extremely open to receiving feedback, hearing what we as the individual experts have to say about a particular position, but really being able to articulate your message and your perspective in a very clear-cut way, I think has been one of the biggest factors in allowing me to excel so quickly.
Yeah, that's a super important piece. I think so much of what I do, other than, helping to grow my team, is also managing up and, thinking about how is my, boss going to interpret this, understand this, be able to communicate this to, her peers and to the rest of the community and hopefully help to advocate for what we really need. So yeah, very important to also remember that, you have to really manage the senior leadership as well. So, I think as we have about 10 minutes left, I'm sure that there are a lot of great questions that have been coming in. We're going to dive into some of those questions and hear from our panelists, hopefully help address some of those. I'm sure there's also going to be a lot of questions related to kind of the job search process, how we specifically got into the role. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive right into questions. Please, if you have any other questions, feel free to submit. But the first one, this one's going to go to Zaria. So from, trial and error is super important in the learning process. What mistakes or missteps have you made in your career, and how did you go about correcting them?
I've made many mistakes. I think the funniest part for me is like a lot of people think that when it comes to like social content, and talking about it from like a social media manager perspective, that when you put something out there, like that's it, it's done, permanent, which sure, in a way it is. But there have been many a moments where I've gotten a message from our CEO being like, take it down. Like, why did you put that up? And I think the best part about that is like the easiest recovery from that mistake is that there is this candid conversation and communication constantly. Like it's very open. We're allowed to make mistakes or expected to make mistakes. And if you make a mistake, fix it. Like it's not the end of the world. So I think the biggest part for me in getting that ability and that leverage to make mistakes was just getting to know people on our teams and talking to them, communicating with them, and letting them know very clearly what I'm doing. And sometimes when you take risks, it will always be a little bit too bold, or it can be great. It's just a matter of how people perceive it. So I think constantly just being ready to adapt and being okay with saying, yeah, I fucked up and now I'm fixing it. And that's it.
Yeah, that's super important. It's, just own the mistake, and get ready to move on to the next one, and don't let it hold you back. That's great. For Kendra, from the audience, I'm a marketing major and I'm confused what area to pursue. How did you narrow down what you wanted to do?
Oof. A lot of trial and error, like a ton of trial and error. I'd mentioned this before, but I had no idea what I wanted to do after. I was like, med school's not for me. I did a PR executive trainee program thinking, oh, this will be similar to marketing. Not similar at all. PR and marketing are two very different things. And I found out I do not like PR. I have so much respect for the folks that can handle that. It is a stressful job, in my opinion. And so I tried a lot of different things. I tried PR, I tried sales, I tried customer success management. And what I ended up doing is I found the bits and pieces that I liked in each job and then said, I want to find a job that lets me do more of this. And so I think the biggest advice, candidly, is your career isn't meant to be this like one directional linear path. It is okay to try different things and say, I do not like this. And in every single job, you will find skills that you can apply to the next one. Even folks that are studying engineering, for instance, if you are an engineer, you are actively in that path and you find, I don't like this, I don't want to do it. I've seen so many people that have gone from an engineering path to a product management path to a product marketing management path. I've seen people in sales go from sales to marketing, operations, or really like more focused in sales, then content marketing design, then marketing operations. And so I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid if your dream job is not super clear. Like try different things and keep hopping until you find the thing that you really love that you can continue to excel in. And it's not like you have to start over every single time. Your experience is what propels your career forward. And so it's normal to start in something that, you have to figure out and then hop on to the next thing. That's the best thing that you can do. And I think what I'm super jealous about is I graduated from college before a platform like Handshake existed. And so it was a lot more trial and error where I couldn't even find things like internships that aligned with my interests. It was just whatever my school had in a large booklet of here are the connections we have within New York. Good luck. And so I think it's really exciting to see that this generation of students has a better springboard to go off of to find those opportunities, try them, and then move on to the next thing. If you love it, amazing. You've hit the jackpot. If you don't, figure out what you loved or didn't love about that, because I think it's easier to know what you don't like than what you do, and then find something that aligns with your interests.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think that you can also even apply that within specific projects. If there's a project that's a little bit more data heavy or a little bit more production heavy or, a little bit more PR heavy, and understand and use that to, get some insight into whether that's something more you want to do or you want to avoid. And so another question that we have for Ziad, can you tell a little bit about how you built yourself as a brand? We see from your LinkedIn that you've not only started a company and made it grow, but you've also built yourself as a brand that's aspirational for, any generation of, kind of marketing consultant folks. So yeah, would love to know how you think about that brand.
So I've been reading all the questions, and so I have so many things to say. But I guess to answer this question about a brand, I think it ties into some of the questions that have been asked. I don't know that I set out to start a brand, and I'm 23 years old. I had no business nor experience doing anything that I do or that I did. And I think sometimes there is this obsession with amassing experience as opposed to amassing knowledge, right? And I think the two things can often be equally valuable. I'm not undermining that experience matters. I'm not undermining that, that hiring millennials was one of the best things that I ever chose to do, and that, hiring adults at our company like transformed a business in a lot of ways. But at the same time, like I said, like we get clients by showing them that we know something that they do not. The same is true with when I'm hiring, right? And if someone knows something or has a brand that we do not understand, that we do not have, that we do not possess, then that is a value add. When someone tells me something that I did not know about, then I need to learn from that person, right? And like, I think oftentimes like business really like tries to like force us into like writing a really stilted email and try to like pretend like marketing is finance, and it's not, right? Like I want my mind to be blown all of the time. And so like for me, it's not about building a brand. It's about like building a community of people who challenge me, building a community of people who like, I want my mind to be sharpened in every conversation that I have, right? I want to be surprised and shocked constantly. I think that's what's good marketing is when something cuts through the noise, when something is different, when something makes us feel something, right? And that is like what I am constantly chasing as a leader, is for our work to make people feel something. That I hope as a person I can make people feel something, right? And I hope the people that are in our community make me feel something. And I know there's a lot of questions about getting in touch with us. Like what I love when people DM me, right? And like my Instagram is like just my name. It doesn't mean I get back to every single person, but like to be honest, like people that I respond to are not the ones who write me like the formal, stilted, clearly copy and paste message. It's the people who taught me something. It's the people who showed me something that I did not know, right? It's the people who like demonstrated their creative thought and process and did something. Like I am most impressed when someone has a thought that I never could have had, right? Like that is what, and I want to constantly be in that sensation. I think that's when we come to really good ideas that push culture, that push marketing, push storytelling, that push hopefully society, inshallah, God willing, forward, right? And so like that's what I am obsessed with as an individual, and however that's manifested, I'm excited about. And to be transparent, the parts about my job are when things feel dry and uncurious and unpurposeful. And I think too often it feels like we're trying to put marketing into a template, and I don't think templates work in an era where rules are meant to be broken, are meant to be rewritten.
I love that. I think the truth and the honesty, of that approach is, I think, what everyone is really drawn to with the brand and how you, convey yourself. So I think, as we are wrapping up, I think, kind of one last question, a quick little poll. There are so many different facets of marketing. I'd love to know, maybe in 5 words or less, we'll go around, is social media experience or knowledge of social media necessary for a job in marketing? So maybe we'll kick it off with you, Kendra, first.
I'm proof that it's not. I'm terrible at social media. I get it, but there are certain parts of marketing, yes. There are other parts of marketing, no. And you work with the people that understand how to do it, like Zaria, that can bring a holistic thing together.
Awesome. Yeah, Zaria, you want to build off that?
I'd say yes, but that's because I'm coming from my biased point of view. I think it gives you an edge and it just connects you to the people you're trying to talk to, because that's where people are at right now. So.
Yeah, Zia?
I would say there's no one size fits all in a world where there are so many different shapes and sizes. I think there are people who can teach me something because they know something about a social media algorithm that I do not. And there are people who can teach me something about a software that's a B2B SaaS platform that I do not, right? And I think for me, it's about what is someone teaching and what is someone bringing. But I do think in a world where we're trying to cut through the noise of the sameness, difference, and owning our difference is really important. I think social media is a powerful platform to own one's difference, to own one's voice. And I think owning your voice, whether on social media or via email or in person, wherever it is, and whatever format works for you and your learning abilities and where you are at in the world and society, I think is palpable and not going anywhere necessary, and can continue to define what the future, I hope, of our industry looks like.
Absolutely.
And
I think
my
that
Instagram at in the, sorry, to everyone saying, like, let's keep the conversation going. There's a lot to talk about here. And I would love to keep in touch with you all and to keep this going. I do think social media is a powerful way to do that, to keep the conversations going and to stay connected, because I do think community first business is where I think we need to be headed, and where I certainly think is pushing us.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Thank you all so much today. Thanks everyone for joining us, and a huge thank you to our panelists for sharing your insights and experience. If you do have a moment, please take 30 seconds to fill out the feedback survey that's in the chat, so Handshake can continue to bring you these awesome events in the future. Make sure to follow Handshake on Instagram at @joinhandshake for more event announcements.